miles down the road. Again, my name is Dexter Kishida, and I am with the city and county of Honolulu, so the main island in the state. Maine because we have over half the population on our island. And I belong to the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency, and I'm newly hired as their Food Security and Sustainability Program Manager. So my role there is to create a food policy council actually in Hawaii, as well as to create a strategic plan on how to become more food secure. We import over 85% of what we consume, which is a little dangerous when we rely on ports and tarmacs to get the majority of what we eat. And that's included in the school district, which I came from. So the state of Hawaii is one unified school district. I'd like to tell a quick story to lay the foundation of tying what we eat to the culture, and and this story, the story of Haloa, really captures how Hawaiians felt about one of their main native crops, and mind you, a crop that we didn't serve in schools for at least the past few decades. So while it was a very important piece of the native Hawaiian diet from maybe the 1920s on, it slowly kind of got replaced with imports from other areas. But the story of Haloa goes something like this, and the native Hawaiian culture was they spoke mostly than wrote stories. So you'll hear different variations a lot of times, but this is a compilation of a lot of what the verbal stories were. And the story of Haloa, whether whispered or shouted, tells a story of connection between all Hawaiians, a story of connection between people and of nature. Wakea, which is Father Sky, and Papa, which is Mother Earth, creators of the beloved island chain, had a beautiful daughter named Ho'ohokulani, whose name means the making of stars in the heavens. Wakea and Ho'ohokulani together conceived a child, and the family waited patiently for the birth. The child, a son, was named Haloa. Haloa means long or eternal breath, and the kupuna, or the elders, whispered, "The child looks like a root." And that's when when the child was born, the child was stillborn. And so that's when the kupuna whispered, "The child looks like a root." The family wrapped Haloa in kapa, or in a paper mulberry cloth, and placed him in a basket of woven lauhala, which is a tree that they weave to make baskets, and buried him in the aina, or the earth. Hokulani grieved the loss of her son, wailing and chanting and crying and mourning and watering the grave with her tears. In time, a plant grew from the gravesite. This unknown plant was fragile and tender, but also strong and healthy, far reaching and long. The stems were slender, and when the wind blew, they swayed and bent as though paying homage. The heart shaped leaves shivered gracefully, as in hula, or the native Hawaiian dance. And in the center of each leaf, water gathered like a mother's teardrop. And as the plant grew, it formed a corm, or an oha. And oha, you may have heard in Lilo and Stitch, is really the beginning of the word ohana, or family. And the whole concept of, or a lot of concepts in Native Hawaiian culture, stem from how the kalo plant grows and matures and then repopulates itself. And later, Ho'ohokulani had another son, also named Haloa, and he became the very first Native Hawaiian. And so that's why Native Hawaiians see Kalo as the elder brother mankind, and so essential to the culture of the Native Hawaiian culture. And to be removed from that for quite a number of years, um, removed a lot of the culture involved. I'm going to take off my headset one sec. I think I'm going to lose you otherwise. Oscar, let me know if you can still hear me.
You're good. We can hear you.
Very fine.
So to get back on track on what the State Department of Education, to give some idea of size, because it's by no means a small school district. It hovers in the 9th or 10th, sometimes the 11th largest school district in the nation. Pre-pandemic, the number of students were about 180,000 students enrolled, serving about 100,000 lunches and 25,000 breakfasts per day. Paid meal prices, $1.10 for breakfast, and lunch ranges between $2.50 and $2.75, depending on whether it's a elementary or a high school lunch meal. During pandemic, enrollment has dropped, as well as participation, like much across the U.S. So that corm, or that kalo plant that you saw the picture of, gets turned into a bunch of dishes traditionally, from poi, that kind of pasty looking, some folks say glue-like consistency, to pa'iai, that more pasty, mashed potato-ish, purple mashed potato look. The leaves are made to luau stew, or that greenish, dark green stew. It has a crystalline structure in it that, if you don't cook it well, does some folks do react. And as a quick side note, up until 2011, it was illegal to sell pa'iai, or that pasty version, when prepared in a traditional method with a stone and a board. In 2011, the legislature approved the use or the selling of it, even though it's traditionally made in that way for centuries. And while the traditional uses were really are important to culture, we realized that with a district of 100, or feeding 100,000 students a day, we needed to figure out maybe different ways to use it, because a lot of our students weren't used to eating it in a traditional way, in poi, or as pa'iai, or even in luau stew. So we thought of we went to the drawing board, kind of drafted up a few methods, but really the poi parfait rose to the top as an easy, palatable way for most of our kids to get introduced in two ways to the kalo plant. So it's poi, it's yogurt, fruit, granola, and kalo chunks. So we would steam the whole kalo and cube it, put it in there so they can actually see what the kalo looks like, as well as poi. And in a familiar kind of jamba juice-esque way, maybe, making a kalo bowl out of that, to much the delight of many of the students. And in other areas of the island chain, lau lau, which is the kalo plant leaf, the lau, wrapped around some meat or some kind of protein, and then steamed for a few hours, was chosen by students as the #1 way they'd like to eat. And so you'll see a bunch of our cafeteria staff individually wrapping about 600 lau lau and then steaming them. So figuring out another modern way to serve traditional foods. The other issue was poi. What was first given to us, or not given to us, was first deemed by the USDA as a starchy veg. And so while that's great, and at least we could use it somewhere in the National School Lunch Program, back in 1991, Hawaii reached out and sought an exemption, or sought USDA to approve it as a grain, because usually that's how it would be eaten. It would be that starch or that grain in the meal, versus as just a starchy vegetable, and then serving a roll or rice with that.
didn't make sense in a traditional diet. So 1991, it was allowed that poi would credit as one slice of bread. Um, it was also brought back more recently to ensure that poi, kalo, and pa'iai would be considered a whole grain. So we did get that designation as well. And partly because kalo is really rich in nutrients. Um, and so while the USDA has very specific measures on what they want to see, whether it's niacin, thiamine, etc., to equal a grain, the argument won out, and while half a cup is a decent sized portion of poi to be served to replace um, once, in fact, it's actually a very good sized portion to replace a slice of bread. Um, you'll see this is the nutrient breakdown for 1 cup, so double the amount. And the second item that we introduced that's an indigenous crop is breadfruit. And breadfruit, a lot of there was no commercial production up until maybe 4 years ago, and we're now projecting to have about 5 million pounds in production in the next 3 years, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But it's a tree crop, and it's an amazing. It has amazing production on a 40 by 40 square foot plot. A fully mature tree can produce up to like 500 pounds of edible product, which is absolutely amazing. And the ulu also very nutritious. Um, and how we implemented ulu are two different ways, and we started with this wrap, and we thought wraps are in, so why not add it as a Kalua pig wrap? So it's a smoked pork with breadfruit wrapped, added a salsa salad, some pineapple, and of course the milk on the school lunch plate. And we thought kids would love it. We found out that this wasn't the way they wanted to eat breadfruit. They thought it was much too starchy inside of the wrap. They love the Kalua pig, not so much the breadfruit, because the breadfruit rose to the top in the flavor profile. So then we stuck it in our beef stew. And in fact, this made even more sense because what we did was we replaced an import crop with a native Hawaiian locally grown crop, breadfruit. So we took out the potato from the beef stew, put in the breadfruit. And I'd say 90% of our students didn't realize at first that that's what we did, until we started the education campaign saying that, hey, look what we're doing. We're putting breadfruit in your stew. And they're like, oh my goodness, but we love breadfruit now. So even better. So sometimes that backdoor method of just product replacement we found works best. And then let them know, hey, by the way, you've been eating breadfruit for the past 3 months. And before I get to my wrap-up slide, I wanted to share that now Ulu has taken the next step and gone into a retail pack. My friends at the Hawaii Ulu Co-op just mailed this to me, and during the pandemic, they're partnering with our schools to send this out. And you can either purchase it, and we also have some philanthropists that gave some money if you can't afford it to. You can get this pack for free. And we've done some online modules where you can cook at home with your kids, and you get this Ulu pack mailed to you, actually. And so taking it that one step further and now introducing it in our homes is that next piece. So, of course, to do all of this, especially because of the size of the district, procurement is a lot of times the reason why we say we can't do things, because there's not enough supply or it's too expensive, etc. Because we got to go with the cheapest product. And what we did in the last few years in the Department of Education is say, yeah, price is usually important, and it is, because we have just a couple bucks to spend on food. But what we said was that the value of what we buy is not just the price, the value of the product, but the values of the product. That it's an indigenous crop that we need to reintroduce to our folks. And we, our district has a huge number of military folks. So they're here for just a few years. So even for those visitors that are here as a resident just for a few years, even more important, we want to introduce indigenous crops to their diet, because this is the give them an authentic Hawaiian experience with native Hawaiian foods wrapped into sometimes modern interpretations of what we eat. As an example, what the district is planning to do this February for Valentine's Day is to do an ulu chocolate mousse. Sorry, I think it's backwards, but to do a chocolate mousse for Valentine's Day using breadfruit. So wrapping values into procurement and then doing what's a request for proposals. So a more values-based solicitation approach than just an IFB or an information for bidding, which is just price-based. The second part that we found really essential is marketing. I mean, education, really. We don't have the millions of dollars to do traditional marketing like the rest of the foodscape or the food system or food manufacturers do. So the way that we do education in school gardens, implementing school gardens and cooking in classrooms is really our number one way to educate. So planting ulu trees in all of our campuses, to much the dismay of many of the custodians, is one thing that we did over the last few years, as well as the last statement of pop to progress. Sometimes you need to have the pop. That we did a lot of media for that Kalo Bowl. It was a familiar presentation to modern day culture, but with a very authentic Hawaiian ingredient in there. So we did a lot of media. The governor and lieutenant governor came out to breakfast. But really the progress is when you start putting breadfruit in stew every single time you serve beef stew. And the kids get used to eating it when they've never even tried that food item just a few months ago. Thank you very much for having me, and look forward to the next set of speakers.
Thank you so much. Also for sharing the creation story. That was really beautiful. Just for the sake of time, we're gonna go ahead and transfer it to the Academy for Global Citizenship crew. And just let me know if you all need when and where to translate, Brian, or if you want to translate, Brian. I'm open either way.
Sure. Let me start out the screen share very quickly.
And for folks, feel free to use the chat if you have any questions as we're going through presentations.
All right, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Dexter, for sharing that. As I was listening to your presentation, I could just see so many similarities with everything that you're dealing with, and everything at our school. So school culture and its influence on institutional food programming is what we're going to talk about. My name is Brian Soto from the Academy for Global Citizenship. And we are actually going to tag team this presentation. So here we have Paul, who is our Director of Operations. We have Heriberto, who is our AGC school chef. He's already introduced himself. And we have Ms. Julia, who's our food service manager. Now, together, we work together to make this food program a reality. A little bit about our school. We were founded back in 2008. We're a small charter school on the southwest side of Chicago. When we were founded, we decided to become a IB school. That means that we're an international baccalaureate program. A lot of our education is very inquiry-based. We also have a dual language program, and we focus on providing students with a very holistic approach to wellness. We're located very close to Midway Airport, which is on the southwest side, and our student population. We're not a huge school. We're a small charter school. We have about 500 students across 2 separate buildings. Most of our students receive free or reduced lunch. We have a large percentage of English language learners and students that receive special education. And these are the 6 pillars that our school basically like operates off of. We focus on serving the whole child, which is probably the biggest thing that we could say about AGC. Everything that we do serves to model academic excellence for our students and also our parents. We work to develop inquirers. We want students asking questions about everything so that they're being exposed to some kind of education wherever they go. We cultivate international awareness through our curriculum, but also through our food program. We foster environmental stewardship, and I'll give you guys a couple of examples of how we make that happen. And then finally, we really work to foster like community building in our school. Now, the next slide that I have, I kind of like jumped the gun a little bit, is a picture of a typical lunch that students receive. And the reason for why I want to go ahead and show this right now is because I truly believe that our school lunch is one of the best reflections of our like commitment to serving the whole child. We want students to feel excited about coming to school, but also about lining up in the cafeteria and knowing that they're going to get something that's both delicious and nutritious, and that's setting them up for success. This is just a picture of Ms. Julia. She's serving some of our students right here. There's excitement when kids come to the line, and the food program, even though it's innovative, even though we stick to all organic, locally sourced as much as we can, it's not something that's out of this world. Like, it's something that we truly believe can be replicated by other organizations. It just takes a little bit more thought. So a little bit about my role here at AGC. I'm a health and wellness teacher. I focus on working with students in 3rd through 8th grade. And what I do is I use what's called a wellness wheel to really guide my instruction. I teach students that, in order to live a healthy life, you need to focus on at least these 6 different aspects of wellness. It's not enough to focus on the physical aspect of wellness, which is the one that most everybody thinks about. Exercising and eating well. One of the things that we learn about is that, those are just components of a healthy lifestyle. But they're very important because without a healthy diet, without a healthy lifestyle, it's very difficult for us to develop our intellectual well-being or to focus on our emotional sense of well-being. When we have a connection with our food, we care more about the environment. We care more about our culture and our culture and our roots, where our family comes from, and that in turn encourages us and our students to engage in the kinds of conversations that we're having right now, where we're talking about each other, where we're talking about our similarities and the way that we can collaborate more in everything that we do. We have a couple of definitions for our students. We learn that wellness is a conscious and active process toward achieving a healthy and fulfilling life. But the main one is the center definition right here. Wellness is multidimensional and holistic, encompassing lifestyle, mental, and spiritual well-being, and the environment. And this is really the one that leads my instruction when I'm teaching kids about health and wellness. We start out the year always learning about the multidimensional aspect of wellness. We learn about the 6 different aspects of wellness and how each of them are very important in helping us to live a healthy life. The next part of our instruction basically deals with our lifestyle, learning about the habits that we currently implement in our life, and which ones we're missing out on, so that we can integrate them and kind of take our life to the next level. We focus on mental and spiritual practices. And then finally, we do focus on the environment a lot. So that leads us to our school food program. our school food program is really, really the core of how we teach kids about their wellness and their well-being. It's very inclusive. And so when we talk about our food program, we're not just talking about the people that are working, behind the scenes preparing the food. We're talking about our food service providers, our food service staff, our vendors, and of course, our school community. So for this one, I would like to pass it on over to Paul, who's going to talk a little bit more about our food service providers, and he's going to share with us a little bit about the story of how our AGC food program and current menu came to be. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So a really critical piece of the founding of AGC is our founder, Sarah Elizabeth Ipple, was this was a huge piece of the school model is pushing institutions, pushing organizations, pushing bureaucracies to deliver kind of healthier food to, in our case, our students. And she wanted the program to be organic, using organic ingredients, scratch-made ingredients, and she was really determined to make sure that we were able to do this within the Chicago Public School District. I really appreciated Dexter sharing those numbers about Hawaii. Chicago as a district has about 350,000 students in CPS. So, that is obviously a massive bureaucracy. As Brian already shared, we're a very small school, a charter school, so we do have lots of autonomy. But it was important for us to work within the CPS system so that any innovations we could make on operations, logistics, procurement, they would be more accessible to the larger district. So our Sarah Elizabeth, our founder, fought really hard to make sure that we are working within the district's food provider, which at that time was Chartwell's, and is currently Aramark. And and the key piece to that, and Chef and Julia will be able to speak to this a little bit, is they are employees of CPS. They are employees of that kind of Aramark CPS partnership. And so we have to follow a lot of the procurement guidelines that the larger district provides. And so far we've been able to prove that, with some additional expenditure, you can put forth an organic scratch-made menu that in our case happens to also be more culturally relevant for our students, for the way that we democratically involve them, students and families, in the process of developing the menu. Just because I'm the numbers guy at the school, just to share an additional number, we do spend about what amounts to 25 cents per meal above and beyond what we get reimbursed from CPS via USDA. And so for, a school of 470 students, that boils down to about like $100,000 of additional expenditures. But as Dexter shared earlier, this is part of our values. We feel like that is money we would spend probably 2-3 times over to maintain the quality of the ingredients and the meals that the bedrock of our community, our students, consume 2, sometimes 3 times a day. So with that, I want to turn it. Am I going back over to you, Brian, or to Julia?
So next up will be our food service staff. We're really the ones that make everything a reality. So if Ms. Julia or Chef Eddie, if you guys want to jump in and share a little bit about how, the role that you play at AGC, and how you've seen our program evolve in its ever-changing ways.
Hola, buenas tardes. Como ya saben, mi nombre es Heriberto Arriola. Tengo trabajando para AGC 8 años. Por la razón de la que yo entré a AGC fue por mis niños. Mis niños están en AGC. Fue como yo pude entrar porque empecé de voluntario, luego me contrataron. Yo en realidad llevo 20 años, más de 20 años en el servicio de la comida, y yo no quise desaprovechar la oportunidad de entrar a AGC porque tenía a mis niños en la escuela. Si gusta traducir eso.
Yeah, and I can take over the translation.
Go for it, Brian. I wrote some notes, but go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So Chef Eddie has been with our school for a little over 8 years. And the way that he got involved with AGC is his two boys are students at our school. He's been in the food service industry for about 20 years. But when the opportunity came about for him to, continue developing those skills at our school, it gave him an opportunity to be closer to his boys and to, bring all of that knowledge to our community.
Gracias. Una de las cosas por la que me gustó AGC fue por el programa de comida que se tenía, orgánico y saludable, y era lo que me encanta a mí hacer, cocinar, no como las típicas escuelas que les mandan todo preparado. Pues en esta escuela iba a ser totalmente diferente, que me interesó. Y pues tengo algunos ejemplos del tipo de comidas que servimos.
Permítame.
Claro.
So he says that one of the reasons for why he was initially drawn to AGC is because of the food program that we have here. He loves the fact that we offer organic food options. He really appreciates the fact that our food is prepared from scratch on a daily basis versus coming into our school in a prepackaged manner with a lot of plastic waste, which is the way that a lot of schools are currently getting their student meals delivered.
Sí, pues tengo unos ejemplos de tipo de comida que servimos o que hemos estado sirviendo. Por ejemplo, lunes tenemos el no carne, el cual podemos servir pastas, ya sea Alfredo pasta, marinara pasta. Tenemos también, podemos servir pizza, todo el tipo de alimento que no lleve carne. Por supuesto, va acompañado de sus componentes que viene siendo el grano, la proteína, la fruta, la ensalada y la opción de leche o su agua.
Yeah. So one of the, for example, one of the initiatives that we have is we do offer a meatless Monday, where we don't serve any meat on that day. And so most of our options, there are a lot of pasta, pizza options, but always keeping in mind that whatever food option that students are getting presented, it does contain the right amount of grains, fruits, veggies. We do have a salad bar that they always have access to. And in terms of what they drink, we have water and we have milk. One thing that's really important to note about our milk is that we serve it directly from a gallon jug. And so students know that we do not use small milk cartons. Rather, we serve everybody individually. And students love drinking water with their meal. So that's a no-brainer. Check.
Gracias. Otros de los ejemplos de los alimentos que servimos durante la semana, entra el pozole, que el pozole lo hacemos desde abajo, from scratch. Tenemos el pollo en adobo, tenemos barbecue chicken, tenemos el breaded fish, tacos de pescado, tacos al pastor, Italian chicken, hamburguesas. Si puede traducir eso, por favor.
Okay. So we have other food options that are available, and I don't think that a lot of those food options needed translation. Everybody understands tacos. Everybody understands, the al pastor and the chicken. So one of the things that he's trying to say is that we do offer food options for students that they recognize at home. Like if when a student comes in and they find out that we're serving pozole on that day, it makes them really excited to be at school, to be having that meal. And as teachers, sometimes we sit with our students and we listen in to their conversations, and it's so beautiful to hear them talk about how much they're enjoying it, different times when they've had it at home. So what Chef does is he really makes sure that he's preparing food that fits everybody's palate while keeping their well-being in mind.
Ya, y por último, pues quería compartir esto que pues gracias a esta pandemia se ha estado trabajando para futuros platillos. Esperamos que sean accesibles. Unos ejemplos de estos platillos tenemos ensaladas. Un tipo es como la de garlic kale with crispy chickpeas, Thai kale salad. Tenemos también un zucchini pasta con lento bolognese. Tenemos como 3 o 4 tipos de hamburguesas vegetarianas con beets, con chickpeas, con black beans. Tenemos una Mexican hamburguesa que lleva tortilla chips. También tenemos algunos guisados como el curry lentil soup, el red lentil chili, cauliflower rice burrito, y tenemos también una variedad de smoothies energéticos que van desde con blueberries, con avocado con banana, pineapple banana, y también tenemos algunos desayunos que estamos trabajando en desayunos también, como un spicy tofu scramble, tofu chilaquiles, tofu quiche y unos vegan breakfast tacos, entre algunos más. Eso es lo que estamos trabajando para un futuro.
So what Chef is saying is that as a result of the school closures, I guess some of the silver lining is that it's given him and the rest of our kitchen staff an opportunity to work on and experiment with different recipes, modifying them in such a way that they work within our budget, they work within our culture, and they also work within our wellness program. We want to make sure that they're fully satisfying their appetite, but also fulfilling their nutritional needs. And so he listed a bunch of different foods, everything from smoothies to different stews, a lot of tofu options. One of the things that you might have caught but wasn't explicitly stated is that part of AGC's mission is to move towards a fully plant-based diet. And so, working in Meatless Mondays is one small step. It's, thinking towards our long-term plans, where we start phasing out of having meat as a daily option and going a little bit more natural. So that's where all the smoothie options come in. That's where all the tofu options come in. All the different salads that are actually very filling, so that students aren't left craving that meat or something that can keep their body filled for a few hours. Chef?
Es todo básicamente de mi parte.
All right. So thank you, Chef. And then we're going to move on to Ms. Julia. Ms. Julia, if you want to share a little bit of your role and how you've seen our food program evolve. She's not around. All right. Well, if Miss Julia comes in, then we can have her speak a little bit about her role. Right now, I'd like to pass it back to Paul so that he can talk a little bit about our vendors and distributors.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes. Ms. Julia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm having difficulty with my phone.
No worries.
Okay, so again, I've been working with AGC for more than 12 years. And like I said, we try our best to do what the kids really wanted. It's like we're trying to do more like how we cook at home. So that's why we have a lot of the, like Chef was saying, the pozole and the chilaquiles, and we try to do it like more at home. And then a lot of things is like a lot of our kids do not no conocen mucho los vegetales.
A lot of our students don't really know their vegetables. It's not something that's introduced at home.
Yeah, so cuando primero vienen en kinder no saben muchas cosas, so tratamos de no empujar, pero de introducir los vegetales y más las cosas. Estoy poco nerviosa, so me disculpan.
It's okay.
Lo que hacemos con Chef y conmigo nos sentamos y más con estudiantes porque en un tiempo hubo como un club de estudiantes que venían a hablar con nosotros y nos daban cosas, ideas que les gustaría a ellos que nosotros cocináramos para ellos. Y Chef y yo no discutíamos, pero hablábamos y programábamos a ver cómo íbamos a hacer porque queríamos poner cosas que los estudiantes querían.
So Ms. Julia's also been with AGC for a really long time, since our school started out. And so she has had the pleasure of working with all of our students from the time when they were in kindergarten to the time they've been, graduated from AGC. And so one of the things that she notices is that oftentimes when our students are coming into our school for the very first time, especially if they're, coming into kindergarten, a lot of the time, the vegetables that we have or the vegetables that are out there are very foreign to them because they haven't been introduced at home. And so one of the things that our kitchen staff does, Ms. Julia, Chef Eddie, and the rest of the team, is that they in a friendly way, they encourage students to try these new foods by presenting them in a way that's culturally relevant. It reminds them of something that they've had previously. An example that I can share is I know that growing up, I thought that there was one type of tomato, or there was like tomato and tomatillos. And then later on, I learned that there's actually like quite a variety of different tomatoes out there. And so what Ms. Julia is saying is that oftentimes students will come in and they'll see these different colors, and it's the same, ingredient that they're used to, but it's still very foreign to them. And so it takes somebody that's passionate and knowledgeable about the food that they're working with and that they're preparing to pass that passion on to the students so that they can also enjoy it. Ms. Julia?
Yeah, and another thing that he helps too for the vegetables is we have a organic garden outside the school at the main school. So we have the kids kind of to join it to go cut the lettuce and the cherry tomatoes and the other stuff that we had, the kale and different kinds of lettuce too. And then we kind of bring them with us so they can help us how to prepare the salad. So we do have like a salad bar. And sometimes they help a lot when the kids come and they're cleaning and they put in. So when all the kids come for lunch, the other kids say, "Oh, we prepared this salad. We did this. We went and cut the tomatoes and the cucumbers." So they kind of like they like that. They like the feeling that what they're eating is what they planned because actually the kids go and plan. So they help a lot to help eat more vegetables and kind of different kind of salads. One of the things that we start doing, and we don't do it anymore because of the kitchen is so small, is the kale. Kale, they didn't know the only kale is what they think is they use it only for decorations. The kale, we started doing kale chips, and they love that. They really love that. So knowing them that we have a different kind of greens, so and then again we are fortunate that we have the green garden so they can go and do it themselves because they love that. They love that. What else?
Well, thank you, Julia and AGC. I want to make sure that we have enough time for
Okay.
our next presenter, but I did want to add the fact that Academy for Global Citizenship is predominantly, I think majority of the students are Latinx or Latino. It's in a Latino neighborhood, Latino and Black, but majority of the students are Latinx and primarily Mexican. So like when you hear, I don't know, for folks on the call, you hear pozole and enchiladas, it's like a Mexican dish, and just really appreciate the sort of intention with creating those home dishes for the students, and I'll speak to this, myself, as I'm a parent of a 5th grader at Academy for Global Citizenship. So really excited about that. But I wanna, if you guys want to do one final, I don't know if Brian or Paul, you want to.
Yeah, I'll just like speed it along and then just wrap it up really quickly. So, we can talk about our distributors and our vendors later on. But really, like, one of the biggest things that I want to talk about is that part of what influences our menu is the community and the collaboration that we have. So we actively involve our parents to come in and help, prepare a lot of the foods that we have. We listen to their feedback. We listen to our student feedback. We have a lot of signage just, all around the school. Our students are involved in, every step of the way. So they grow and they help our garden. They, help collect the crops. They actively learn to compost, and then they get to enjoy their food together. And so really the biggest impact that we have comes from our students just, showing up to school excited. Most of our food is being eaten, so we're reducing a lot of food waste. We got a lot of parent testimonials saying that they've, really changed their eating habits at home as a result of the education that students are getting at AGC. And really, I mean, just the key takeaways for any organization out there is make sure that you get all stakeholders involved. Don't give up, because it will get difficult, especially when you start, getting confronted with all these roadblocks, like, financial issues or organizations that are unwilling to change certain policies. And definitely make sure that you tap into your school community, because there's so many resources in the people that you have that, you may not know about unless you're engaging them in conversation. So, sorry about going a little over time, but thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
We'll move it along right to you, Jesse, and get started with that part of our presentation, and then we'll have some time at the end for discussion and questions.
Okay, Jesse, I'm going to share my screen, but if you want to direct me where to go on the website, feel free.
Uh-oh, Jesse, you're muted. Let's see.
How's that?
Oh, there you go. We can hear you now.
All right. The brief history lesson that I wanted to offer was how the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin arrived here. In the early 1820s, the federal government decided that the westward movement of colonialists dictated that we vacate our homelands in upstate New York. Oneida Nation is one of the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee, probably known better here as Iroquois Nation or Confederacy. We were brought here to the Green Bay area and were given acreage that had previously been occupied by the Menominee Nation. There are 11 tribal nations here in the state of Wisconsin, and we all collaborate with different recipes that are indigenous and create dishes that are traditional as to the agricultural traditions that we brought with us here to Wisconsin from upstate New York. The United Nations school system was established approximately 45 years ago. It began with a high school and a small elementary school. And since then, we have expanded from pre-K through grade 12. There's a turtle school. You can Google it on Google Earth. If you Google Oneida Turtle School, it'll come up and you'll see a picture of a building that is in the shape of a turtle, which speaks to our creation story. As far as school systems meal programs, we do work with the state agency, Department of Public Instruction here in Wisconsin. There are provisions that are dictated by the USDA. And so we have to follow those guidelines in order to create an adequate amount of nutritional value in each meal so that it meets those provisions. Some of the resources that we have primarily our beef program, We have a buffalo program. We also have what's known as Junhenkwa. Steph, if you'd like to bring up that website, I believe I see it right here.
Sorry, click where?
Let's see. What you have, this is the Oneida Nation website. Let's click down here a little bit. I can't see part of the screen because, okay. I see, yeah, this is the Oneida Nation. If you Google or go to the Junhenkwa, do you know how to spell that? Okay, the spelling is T-S-U-N, oh, I'm sorry, T-S-Y-U-N-H-E-H, there it is. See it? Junhenkwa Farm. There you go. Just to give you an idea of where we're located, we're about 10 miles outside of the city of Green Bay. Our reservation is a diamond-shaped, about 26,000 acres. And the Junhenkwa, which translated into English is life sustenance, provides us with several different items that we use in our traditional recipes. We have, they grow our Oneida white corn, which is dried and processed so that it can be made into different types of, so we can serve them in meals either as whole grain corn or as flour in our bread. It's called ganastol. And then we also have a mush that's prepared from the ground corn. Junhenkwa also provides us with, which is new this year, is grass-fed shorthorn beef. It's a breed that was recently acquired by Oneida, and it is self-sustaining in that it's like buffalo. They don't need to be tended to on a daily basis, fed, milk, that sort of thing. And they calve on their own. So when the calves are born, they can go find a nice quiet spot in one of their fields, give birth, and then those calves are raised on milk until they're ready for processing. We also, one of our, Junhenkwa also provides us with chickens, even though it's in a limited amount at this point, but they're in the process of enlarging the flock of chickens that will be laying eggs and providing meat. What you see there is corn that is being dried. It is braided and then hung so that it dries it for preservation. And in the spring, workers will go out there, gather these braids, pull them down, and then shuck them or remove the dried corn from them. That dried corn then can be processed it can be changed by a process called mixonology, which basically you boil the corn with acidic substance. We use wood ash, hardwood ash, and you can use baking soda. All those will work. What that does is it basically loosens the hull from each kernel of corn, and then once that's re-dried, can be re-dried into dehydrated corn, or it can be ground up and used as a mush. Generally, a traditional method for serving that corn would be to mix it with berries, strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, anything that's available, and you know, we have a traditional breakfast. Moving on from the Junhenkwa, we also have a number or a large herd of buffalo. Right now there's 156 head. We had 36 calves born this last spring. So we try to keep the number of buffalo at a maximum so that we don't overcrowd the herd. Right now, they graze on about 360 acres of pasture that we can, and then they're moved from one pasture to another so that they have enough grass and natural buffalo feed, if you will. That operation is also run by the Black Angus beef program. Our Black Angus beef herd is up around 500 right now. The calves are born and raised until they're weaned from their mothers, and then they are allowed to grow, or they're raised until they be about 18 months to 2 years, and then they are sold. Then they are sent to our processor. The processor will make that meat available. When it comes to us, it's 99% of it is ground. We can customize that to be 90% lean, which helps us maintain the high protein content. Going back to the corn, I wanted to mention also that the corn, as you saw it, once it's dried and cooked or processed and cooked, has a protein level of about 22%, which makes it easy for us when serving it or mixing it with other dishes to bring or maintain the minimum amount of protein that is required in each meal. So getting back to the beef, we buy it as I said, in ground form. It's delivered to us frozen, and then we create different meals. One of the traditional meals, or is now traditional here in Oneida, is goulash, which is basically like I don't know, hot dish, if you're familiar with that. It's like cooked ground beef with vegetables and some noodles. It's a favorite here, but it is highly nutritious because of the amount of and the quality of the beef that we serve here. Going on next to the Oneida Community Integrated Food Systems. This is an organization that was created with the cooperation of the Janhanko, of the Oneida Nation Farms, the apple orchard, which is also operated by Oneida Nation Farms. And all of those different groups are represented in OSIFs. We have monthly meetings where we strategize on how to get the best quality and nutritious food to the table in our cafeterias. So I can't stress enough the amount of work that's involved, and I'm sure Chef can relate to the amount of labor that's involved in bringing a raw product into the school and then having to process it into an edible meal. So we're very happy, we're very proud with the program that we've created here, and we're going to continue as long as we can. As I'm sure all of you can relate, the COVID-19 pandemic has thrown a stick into our spokes, so we had to slow down because we're serving non-congregate meals, and we're not only feeding the children of the Oneida Nation school system, but also other members of those households. So it's become quite an adventure over the last 6 months. And with that, I thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I'm hoping to learn a lot more about how different organizations use the resources that they have available, and maybe come away with a few new recipes.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and thank you for sharing about the nutrition of corn. I just want to say, like, a parallel process from like Aztec technology of nixtamalization, of using it's the same process as like instead of black ash, is of using calcium to get rid of that sort of the husk of the corn kernel of the mice, and to make the nutrients more available, and how much of that is rooted in indigenous technology. So just really appreciate the connections here across all three models. I want to go ahead. Go ahead, Jesse.
I apologize for omitting that because my father is actually of Mexican ancestry. And I've been at conferences that included several people who come from the region of Mexico where the production of corn and agriculture started over 10,000 years ago. So, and I know a lot of Oneida people think that we're the only ones that grew corn, but it actually worked its way north from central and southern Mexico. So, and I'm proud of that too.
Yeah, definitely the ancestor, right? Is the Teocintle from the valley in Central America. But really excited. We want to go ahead and open it up for questions if folks might have. But I could pose a question from our. It looks like someone I was about to pose, but someone just put in the chat. If AGC can talk more about procurement and how you work with Aramark. Also, how do you get feedback from students on your menu items? And I have a student right here too, if you need. I'll let you all answer that.
Sure. I can take over this one, and I'll start out actually with the second part of that question. How do you get feedback from students on your menu items? So Chef and Ms. Julia, they're there every single day. They're making that connection with students as they're going through the line. And so one of the things that Chef mentioned when we spoke the last time was that one of the things that he really enjoys is making that eye contact with the student when they're coming back and asking for seconds. Like every time that happens, that's a form of feedback that Chef, takes back to the table. And he's like, hey, the last time that we served this, new meal that we're, piloting right now, I had a lot of students coming in asking for seconds. And so once he brings that back to the table, him and Ms. Julia will sit down together and figure out how they can make that food option something that's a sustainable staple in our monthly menu. So that's one of the ways that we get feedback from students. Another thing that was alluded to earlier was that we have like what's called an AGC Green Team, and we also have our student council. And together, these groups of students, they're tasked with going back to their classroom, gathering feedback, passing out forms and being like, hey, how did you enjoy this breakfast option? How, what changes would you make to it? What are some options that you would like to see in the future? And once they gather all of that data, then they bring it back to Chef and Ms. Julia. And then together they work within the parameters of being in a school that works within CPS, that works together with Aramark. So that's the feedback from students. Regarding procurement and work with Aramark, I'll pass that on to Paul because he's the real expert when it comes to that.
There you go, Paul. You should be able to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so over the time, we've built up a pretty good relationship with Aramark. I think honestly, to be totally frank, they just sort of look at us and say, hey, if you guys can manage what you're doing over here and not burn the place down, we'll leave you alone. Because I think when you are working within a big bureaucracy, they want to check their boxes and make sure that they're in compliance. But when you have that good relationship and a track record of being able to kind of innovate with your menu and not cause any kind of issues or headaches for them, they somewhat leave you alone. So that starts with I'm in conversation with the Aramark local representative all the time. We're currently, as Chef alluded to earlier, going through a process where we're piloting some new menu items. And so we're just linking with them and their dietitians and saying, hey, if we wanted to move more plant-based and do some of these new items, what approvals do we need from you guys? What's the process look like? And they've been really collaborative on that front. So again, yeah, it comes down to those relationships. I do think, right, because we're a small school and we've got that autonomy, really the way that we're able to maximize that is by saying to them, hey, we'll do all the work. And this is really a testament to Chef and Julia as well. Like Brian had it in the presentation, but it's really true. Like they're probably the most critical stakeholders in this whole situation because they are technically CPS and Aramark employees. But if they're sick, we can't just have a sub chef or a sub dining manager slot right in because we do things so differently. So it involves like kind of your team taking on that autonomy and really running with it. And but understanding that with that autonomy comes greater responsibility and a need for maybe some additional work than you typically expect. But we think the benefits are really outweigh the costs.
Can I chime in with a few thoughts too? I came from a food service management company prior to joining the school district, and a couple of things that I'd like to add. One, when you procure the food service management company, put in your contract all of the measurables that you want. Put it in there to make sure that they can do it and do it authentically. And the last thing that, or not the last thing, the other thing that recently I'm warming up to is having a group like the Center for Good Food Purchasing be involved to authenticate what the food service management company is doing. So a little more background to Hawaii, we actually used a Chicago chef, Beyond Green Partners. He actually reviewed Aramark in one of the museums in Chicago. And we used Chef Greg to come in and help start our program because he had really good metrics on the programs that he reviewed in Chicago. So both putting really solid contract together, but also on the back end, review the food service management company. As a self-operated school district, we look at that now too and get somebody to review not just the financials, but the operations to get to our 5 goals that we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. Dexter, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the program you're referring to. Is it the Aina Bono?
Yes. So
yeah.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't really mention that earlier. That in 2015 we started the Aina Pono program, which is roughly translated good food. Pono being good or righteous, and Aina meaning that which feeds or simply food. We implemented that as our farm to school program, and what the goals. Well, the first thing we had to come up with what metrics are we going to use, and it was to increase scratch cooking, to increase local purchasing, decreasing waste, essentially sum up most of the goals. And then later, a few years later, we realized we need to upgrade our systems, and systems being not just technology like computers, which was definitely needed. We didn't have any system-wide tracking of inventory, for example, so that was a little difficult. But also systems in how we operate kitchens. We developed a very French kitchen-ish maybe method of doing work where you do the fruits, you do the veggies, and you do the main dish, and you just serve or you just wash dishes. Everybody had their role. We had to rethink this, and when you're making 600 lau or there's individually wrapped packets of leaf and meat, you need to work together because that one cook is not going to do that all themselves. And so we had to do a rethink, and Chef Greg actually helped a lot with this to implement kind of swarm technology in our cafeterias, where all the staff, whether you're the dishwasher or the cook, when it's lau day, get on the line and start wrapping. And so even pizza day, get on the line and start building fresh pizza so we can do it same day. But the metrics were really important because you can't really progress if you're not measuring what you're doing. And the other part to it is the student feedback. And I found, maybe it's my cognitive dissonance or it is true, but we do student testing, right? We take it out and do a popsicle stick poll where give little samples and kids put a popsicle stick in this yes or no, or for little kids, it was circle the smiley or the sad face. And they'd be like, the ulu wrap, we love it on sample day. And then we look in the trash on the day that we serve it and it's full of product. And we're like, what the heck? They like this product. And so I think like AGC has stated, really talking to students, and the numbers kind of prove it sometimes in the end, right? How many lunches you serve might be the final stamp of approval. And then the lowest day you don't, or the day that you kids come for second. So we're constantly trying to modify the student feedback, the student feedback loop of how we can better get what students really want, because sometimes what they say they want also doesn't match what they really want. They know the right answer. They love veggies, so they're going to tell us they want lots of vegetables on their plate. And then we see during an offer versus serve line that everybody is grain and meat, grain and meat, grain and meat. And we go, okay, we've got to work on the marketing or education part of it so that we can bridge the gap of what they know they should have and what they really are choosing.
And thank you for that. Jessie, I'm wondering if you could speak about in terms of bridging the gap, because you mentioned Juhenkwa. If you could talk about the white corn harvest, what that is, and the way in which the school is involved in Juhenkwa in the fall.
We have a program here where all of the classes in the middle school on up go and participate in not only the harvesting of the corn, but the braiding, and the hanging of it in the fall, and then in the spring they'll also go do the husking. There are also sustainability classes that will walk, because the Juhenkwa is within walking distance of the school. And tour the farm, see how the animals are raised. Sometimes they're shoveling manure, but they all enjoy those days. That I guess probably because it's getting them out of the classroom. But there's that it makes it easy for us when we tell them that say the beef that we're serving them on a given day was from a cow that was raised within walking distance of here, or that it was even just walking around 5 months ago. But they can relate to that because they see what's going on at the Juhenkwa. Same thing with the chickens, same thing with the eggs. We use tobacco in ceremonies, so they see where the tobacco is grown. So that part of it makes it easy for us. The educational aspect of it makes it very easy for us to be able to build that bridge.
Thank you. Are there any other questions that folks might have for our panelists today? I want to leave it open. So Zainab she'd love to hear more about how the panelists work to ensure your meals are truly, I should say, they're asking, how do you ensure your meals are truly culturally appropriate? If anyone wants to start.
Well, for us, it's through education. Part of the sustainability program that we have here in our school system is getting people on board, getting stakeholders, to actually participate in the creation of I shouldn't say creation, participating in the history of our agriculture. Corn is a big part of it. Buffalo is another big part of it. And they know that buffalo used to graze in the entire continent, both from Canada all the way down to Central America, from California all the way to the East Coast. Now, they're considered to be plains animals, but that's just not true. But teaching them the history of the agriculture that we have participated in for so many years, again, makes it easy for us to make a determination as to whether the traditional foods are actually that. In the summers past, we have participated in a program that is sponsored by the Department of Public Instruction here in Wisconsin, where several of our tribal nations got together, and food service workers, food service directors, kitchen workers, and collaborated on creating meals that were considered to be traditional by the various tribes. As it turns out, we're pretty much share the same traditional and agricultural processes. So because of that familiarity, we're able to determine and obtain foods that we know are highly nutritious, that are traditional, that can be served in our indigenous cafeterias.
Yeah, I'd like to just follow along with that. Chef Eddie and Ms. Julia are both, their background is very, very similar to a lot of the other parents that we have at our school. And so just like by default, like they grew up with those ingredients that are culturally relevant to our students. They grew up with that style of cooking. They know the sazon, like the right seasonings to add, so that when students first taste that food, it reminds them of home. It's something palatable. And even if they're being tricked into eating more nutritiously, like if that's what it's going to take, then that's what we're going to do. Ultimately, like you have to expose students anyways. And so one of the things that we do, for example, is, Chef mentioned that we have tacos al pastor. To those of us that don't know tacos al pastor, very traditional way of preparing pork and then serving it as a taco. It's from Mexico City. It's very, very traditional. A lot of our students are very familiar with it. They love it. But we understand that pork is not necessarily like the healthiest food option, and it's not something that we want to be serving for our students on a regular basis. So we replace it with chicken, but we still give it the right seasoning so that when students are eating it, it's still very familiar to them. The pozole that we serve, I can attest to this, having grown up on pozole for most of our big family celebrations. The taste is there. Like I know I recognize the taste profile. I know that it's good for me because I know of all the different ingredients that go into making that stew. But at the same time, I know that I'm eating it at AGC. So while my parents were not going out of their way to procure like the organic corn, I know that AGC does. While my parents weren't making sure that it came from a vendor that's taking all these things into consideration, AGC does. And when we explain that to our students, it really allows them to buy in and be like, hey, I know what this tastes like. I know that I enjoy it. And hey, it's good for me and the environment for all these other reasons that I've learned about in class. And that really makes it more palatable to our students. And like I said, the tacos al pastor and the pozole are just two examples. We do have we have huevos con chorizo. Again, not pork, it's a chicken option. We offer students tortillas so that they can use that as a vessel for their food. We really go out of our way to make sure that students recognize at least 2 or 3 of the main meals that are being presented on a weekly basis so that they can maintain that connection when they come to school.
In Hawaii, I'll use the Lau Lau example again. When Chef Greg from Chicago came over and helped us out, it was Lau Lau Day. And he's like, it needs some garlic. And the aunties in the kitchen were like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Native Hawaiians didn't have garlic. It came from the continent, not from here. We're not putting garlic in this. So that is part of it. Folks grew up with this, but it's also, I guess, authentic depends on what that means. For Hawaii, we just celebrated a traditionally made Hawaiian double hull canoe that sailed across the world through Europe and circumnavigated the world and came back. While that was the spotlight, right next to her was Hikinaiali'i, which is a modern day double hull canoe with solar panels and an engine and a whole bunch of communication equipment, etc. And so that was probably the best picture of, can we do indigenous food traditionally, like a laulau, no garlic, just beef and lua leaves, and then the kalo bowl, which yogurt wasn't around, cow's milk wasn't around, but also a way that students will love, and so providing both. So I guess it depends on what you mean to ensure that we're doing it authentically, because also our opinion is it's food, and food is going to evolve over time, and so there's certain things that are just sacrilegious, you're just not going to do to the food. But other than that, let's create and let's develop a modern interpretation of using our indigenous foods.
It's a beautiful way to wrap up. I don't know. Yeah, I think we're at 1:31, and really appreciate the panelists for your time and your energy and sharing everything you guys shared today, and for everyone attending, for actively listening to something that is truly important, right? Digging into our ancestral knowledge and roots. We know that culture is not static. So to your point, Dexter, that it's evolving, and then how do we grow with the changing times, and at the same time be sustainable and respectful of our history. So thank you so much. This is archived on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to find it there at Chicago Food Policy Action Council YouTube channel. And we will be sending out like a follow-up with all this information. So wanna just appreciate you all again. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for the opportunity. It was a pleasure meeting all of you.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to bring you all back together for part 2 for our Chicago Food Policy Summit that we host in February 2021, also probably virtually.
Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Adiós.